Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Kylie Heap, and I serve as the Executive Director of Support After Abortion. I'm so glad to have this meeting today so that we can share our newest resource called Finding Solid Ground, a Man's Guide to Healing After Abortion. I have two wonderful people with me to lead this conversation, Niles Pinkney and Michelle Maslin. Niall serves as our men's healing coordinator. He is a former college athlete, holds a degree in sociology and another degree in criminal justice. He brings his personal experience of healing after abortion to our providers across the country and across the world. He's passionate not only about coaching, but also parenting after abortion and helping other men heal and thrive. And in addition to working directly with men, he also supports providers with resources and training and connection. Michelle is our communications manager for Support After Abortion. She holds a bachelor's in international business and an MBA with an emphasis in marketing. She has a wealth of experience in marketing and communications, and she plays a key role in guiding all of our messaging for Support After Abortion. Her work blends both the professional insight and compassion shaped by her own reproductive losses. So let's begin our time together, and thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Kylie. I appreciate the introduction so much. And we also want to thank everyone for being here and welcome you. And we're so excited to talk about finding solid ground. So to get the conversation started a little bit, just to give a little bit of background, the first question I want to ask you, Michelle, is can you share a little bit why we decided to write an abortion healing book for men and why a faith-based one?
Absolutely. I'll also welcome everybody here. I'm so glad you're here with us, and we are so eager to show you Finding Solid Ground. The why. Our research shows that three-fourths of men report adverse impacts after abortion, includes depression, anxiety, grief, regret, anger, guilt, etc. And even more men, 83%, said that they would have benefited from talking with someone about their experience. So we know men are hurting and that they want support. Our research also showed that 40% of men said they prefer a religious-based abortion healing approach. So we wanted to provide a religious resource for that 40%. A religious resource, that can mean a lot of different things. In fact, we have the prayer book as a companion that complements Keys to Hope and Healing. Some men are open to a deep Bible study with homework, and there are great resources for that, and many of you might be using them. Others want to bring their faith into their healing process, but in a less intense way. Finding Solid Ground resonates with men no matter where they are in their faith journey, from those who are open and exploring to those who are already walking closely with God. Niles, would you tell us about how men receive information, what approach resonates with them, and how that ties into Finding Solid Ground?
Of course, Michelle. And I think finding solid ground is not think, but no, finding solid ground has approach to where it's very conversational. It's guy to guy. It's straightforward, as us men like to know. We don't want to beat around the bush. We want to get straight to the point. We just want the details and we got to know what we got to do. And it's shoulder to shoulder as well to let us know that we're not alone in this journey, but we have someone walking alongside of us and letting us know that we have someone going on this, our healing journey to start. That's part of what is truly unique about finding solid ground, the tone and the style. It's written man to man in a relaxed way, as I mentioned, in a conversational way. It's direct and it has relatable story and analogies for men. Michelle, would you please show us a few examples of this?
Absolutely. Thanks for that framework on Finding Solid Ground's tone and style. So, what I'm going to share with you here is just a few snippets, just to give you a taste of the kind of low key, casual, what we've come to call man speak style of Finding Solid Ground. Things like, all right, let's cut to it. Now, let's tackle two of the toughest parts of the journey. Here's the deal. Be honest. Did you read the chapter title and think, I don't need this? As a man, we don't talk about our feelings. Your mind is an engine. Rev it too hard for too long, you'll burn out. Here's the rub. Boom, you've made it. Props to you. Niles, does that resonate with a guy? Does that sound like what you'd say?
Yes, it sounds like I'm talking to one of my friends through text, or maybe we're sitting down at lunch together, and it sounds like something they would say. And I really can appreciate finding solid ground's tone to make me feel that comfortable and make it feel very natural. So, Michelle, I know this is how guys talk, but what do experts say who have studied men?
Thanks, Niles. As Niles talks about, that guy to guy, no fluff tone really works for men. And it's not just a hunch, it's backed by research. Psychologist Dr. David Levant, who's known for his work in the psychology of men and masculinities, coined this term, normative male alexithymia. It's a very fancy word that basically says something we all know. It's a culturally shaped pattern that men may struggle to recognize, express, and manage their emotions because they've been taught to hide or ignore them. Finding solid ground cuts through that by using that casual conversational man speak tone that feels like a guy talking to your friend, not a textbook or a lecture. The stories in Finding Solid Ground are authentic. The language of the book is straightforward, and the tone invites, not pressures men to reflect, feel, and heal at their own pace. And that's what helps it resonate and work. In fact, the first non-staff guy to read it, he was nodding his head, laughing in parts, silent in others. And then in the end, he said, Finding Solid Ground was very relatable. Niles, is that high praise coming from a guy who doesn't say a lot?
I wouldn't say it's just high praise from a guy that doesn't say a lot, but any man, especially to feel and really be able to communicate what he experienced throughout his journey through the book. And I really want to say that is, like Michelle says, it's something that we really want to say is very relatable for men, and finding solid ground make sure to sticks to that.
Thank you. The next image on this slide shows guys walking and talking, and it's titled Male Brains Benefit from Movement. But before I share with you what the expert said, Niles, I want to ask you, does this image and this idea resonate with guys?
Oh, yes. That definitely resonates my personal experience. Some of my best conversations with my friends and other people that I may not even know very well have came from doing certain things like playing basketball, pickup games of football, going bowling, certain things like that. And it doesn't have to be sports activities like I have mentioned, but it can be different ways of movement. Maybe it can be somebody you want to work out with. It also gives you the feeling maybe somebody you go fishing. I know that some of you are like fishing, that's a movement. If you're in a way of just throwing that rod out there and reeling, that's your thing, that's your movement. But I feel like the overall feeling is very comfortable for men. It doesn't feel like it's a therapy session where you're just looking me eye to eye, but it lets me know that we can have fun, we have an enjoyment in moving and making our bodies active and have conversation as well.
Thanks, Niles. That really adds to it and leads right into what Michael Gurian said. He's a licensed marriage and family counselor, New York Times bestselling author, and the founder of the Gurian Institute. He says a lot of guys open up more when they're doing something, like Niles said, walking, working, playing catch, rather than sitting face to face. He even starts his therapy sessions by walking with his clients. He says that movement helps men connect words to emotions and memories. And that's a pattern that many counselors have noticed. And it's one reason why Finding Solid Ground keeps the tone casual and real and incorporates challenge tasks. Dr. David Wexler, a clinical psychologist who works with men, says that sitting and talking can feel really uncomfortable for a lot of guys. But when the focus is on a shared activity, like playing cards or doing something together, it takes the pressure off. He says focusing on the game instead of the counselor often helps men talk more freely. Niles, is that something that you found with other guys?
Yes, playing cards. I know some may feel like, how does that work? But men, sometimes we don't want to feel like we're being grilled with questions or you're trying to over evaluate me or anything like that. And I feel like that's what it speaks to. It gives us the opportunity to be in a safe space, have an activity together that we can relate and have fun, such as cards, like you mentioned, and just be able to talk. In between the trash talk, we can have actually some personal conversations and enjoyment and learning a little bit about each other. And I then as well, Find Solid Ground makes that space. It creates a relaxed atmosphere, resonates with men, and makes it easier for them to open up even with themselves without even talking to anyone. Here are a few examples for Find Solid Ground that show movement activities just to give you an idea. While you think about and work through your emotions, here are a few tasks designed to get you in the game. Head to the gym or go for a run. Crank up a playlist of your favorite music. Try a calming trick. And those are a few things that Finding Solid Ground presents to us, as well as we have call outs. And the call outs that you'll find throughout the book, like as this one such here is, just like a soldier knows his terrain, a guy's got to understand his emotions and handle them effectively. Personally, this spoke to me. One of the things I've heard, I'm a big quote guy, and everybody that knows me, I put quotes as screensavers and everything like that. I can't remember exactly where I heard it, but you must know yourself better than you know your enemy. And at times, I feel like I can be my own worst enemy. But finding solid grounds present me with ideas to really look at within myself and be on my good side instead of being my own enemy. And as a guy, I just want to say call outs are good. That's a direct approach finding solid ground has. It really gets our attention and draws us into the content.
That makes so much sense. Thank you, Niles. Another part of finding solid ground is that there is this strong, steady focus on God's love and mercy throughout the book in a conversational way that feels real and approachable for men. Like this section, He's always ready to meet you where you are. His grace lifts you up, wipes the slate clean, and gives you strength. Even in the darkest moments, because of God's love, we are not consumed. His compassions never fail. That's the power of God's love. It's always there, steady as a rock, unshakable. His love doesn't budge. Niles, does the way Finding Solid Ground talks about God and his love and mercy, does that speak to you? Does that resonate with men in general, do you think?
Well, personally, it made me go back to a conversation I had with my coach when I was an athlete. He told me, and I wish I could remember the exact Bible verse, but it always stuck with me with this saying was, weeping may endure at night, but joy comes in the morning. And men, we can be very hard on ourselves. And I feel like we put all this weight on our backs with everything going on. We put on financial, personal issues, emotional, certain things like that. But knowing God is there for us no matter what, and like you said, unshakable, his love doesn't budge. Just lets us know if God can love us this way, why don't we love ourselves this way as well? And I feel like that's the message that Finding Solid Ground really pushes, and I can appreciate. And I know other men will as well.
Thank you, Niles. I really love that. I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people listening. Finding Solid Ground speaks into the complexity of men's experiences with stories that guys can actually see themselves in. It has an intentionally wide range of men's experiences because abortion affects men in all kinds of situations, and no two journeys are the same. The stories are drawn from real men's experiences, and each is a blend of anonymous, composite, representative, and fictionalized elements. They reflect authentic male experiences while protecting privacy and identity. The men in the Finding Ground stories come from all walks of life, with different relationships, faith backgrounds, roles in the abortions, and emotional responses. And their paths to healing are just as varied, but each one shows that healing is possible.
Now let's talk nuts and bolts. Each chapter has the same format and sections. Starts with a roadmap to set a plan for what the guy's going to encounter and work through. The first part of a man's story up gets the gears moving in a man's head. A food for thought right after. Spiritual insights related to the chapter's focus. A challenge time and questions and tasks to help guys reflect and dig into their own experiences. You know, men, we love to make sure we're using our hands or using our brains in some way. We'll finish up the rest of the man's story, and then we'll have a prayer to give men words to bring their part of their journey to God. Michelle, can you share with us a little bit more about these elements, please?
I'd love to. As Niles said, each chapter opens with the beginning of a man's story, and we come back to him later in the chapter to see how his journey unfolds. This slide gives you just a taste, the first few paragraphs of Paul's story in chapter 1. These stories are one of the key features that makes Finding Solid Ground resonate with men. They make the chapter's themes real and relatable. Several readers have given feedback on the impact of the stories. One said, the men's stories were powerful, and for me, the most meaningful part of the book. Instead of just reading concepts, the stories let men see those ideas play out in someone else's experience. which often helps them recognize truths about their own. And these aren't just quick snippets. Each part of the story is about a page and a half. So you get 3 full pages per chapter of the man's story. And they go deep enough to build connection, but not so long that guys feel like they're reading a novel. This slide gives you a little taste of the spiritual power sections in Finding Solid Ground. Each one pulls in scripture and connects it to the chapter's theme in a way that's approachable. The language is simple, direct, and relatable, like these excerpts. Think about David. The guy went through some intense stuff. For you, the battle may be more wrestling with your own emotions. Just like David leaned into God for strength, you can too. And it speaks the way a lot of guys think. You'll see lines like, okay, guys, it's time to get real. In Galatians, Paul reminds us. Psalms gives us a blueprint. Matthew offers us a lifeline. It's scripture presented in a way that feels like a trusted friend pointing you to something solid. Niles, as a man who's walked this road of abortion and healing, how do the spiritual power sections hit you?
As I said before, I love quotes, I love scriptures, I love those because those are things that I can keep near me, and I feel like a lot of men can attest to that, as well as they can write this down, maybe put in their notes that they come back to read. I feel like that's really, really special about Finding Solid Ground, that we're also helping you through your abortion healing journey, but as well as we're giving you little snippets here to carry with yourself, as well as take along with you in your journey as you continue. I think personally myself, I've kept a lot of scriptures that we haven't found solid ground through my read. And every time I go back and read some more, it's always something more I want to keep to myself. I dive a little bit deeper. So find solid ground. I know it was special to me, but I know it could be special for other men as well.
That's really powerful to hear your perspective, Niles. Thanks. Think I remember you saying that you like write some and keep them somewhere where you'll see them even closer than your notebook.
Yes, sometimes I'll pin them on my mirror. At times I'll keep little pieces of paper in my car, whatever's available, because you can never know when you can need it. And men, we're always on the move, so that time maybe we just gives us a chance to stop and take a break.
That's awesome. Thank you. Every chapter in Finding Solid Ground includes a set of questions to help men dig deeper, to get guys thinking, processing, and really working through what they just read, not just skimming over it. They help guide reflection in a way that feels doable and meaningful. And each chapter wraps with a prayer that's written in first person, so the man can pray it just as it's written if he likes. The words help him bring what he's read and the work he's done in the chapter to God, and to ask for what he needs to keep moving forward in healing. Now we're going to talk a little bit about each chapter. The introduction explains who the book is for and the patterns and elements in each of the chapters, which we've just covered for you. So we're going to jump to chapter 1. Chapter 1 talks about your role. Niles, would you talk about what that means?
And thank you, Michelle. I think that there's many different roles that could be applied to different men that are picking up Finding Solid Ground. Maybe a man agreed with the decision. That could be someone that disagrees or someone that doesn't know about it until later. And Finding Solid Ground really helps every man in those varieties because it speaks to all. It doesn't feel like any man is singled out like, oh, this may not be for me. Finding Solid Ground speaks to everyone. And it brings me back to what my coach said to me one time. He says, you have 20% of a situation, but are you taking 100% accountability for that 20%? And at first I said, me being a young kid, I was like, that's not the right math. That's 120%. No, not at all. He's saying for that little bit of percent you may have or feel, are you owning up to it? And I feel like that's what Finding Solid Ground presents to a man as well. Taking up any role that you have in any capacity, take accountability for it, and let's grow from there.
I love that. Really appreciate that, Niles. So why do you think that self-honesty is so difficult, especially for men beginning their healing journey?
Self-honesty can be difficult at times because men, we don't like to be wrong sometimes. Sometimes we like to make sure we're on our P's and Q's, as my coach would say, or my dad, or any other man I've talked to, be on our P's and Q's, slash the T's, dot the I's. But it just really helps us develop buy-in. It helps us be able to look within ourselves without judgment and being able to be honest conversations. As we said, we want to look within ourselves and be able to think and understand where we are in our journey and where we can grow.
Thanks. So let's do one more question for chapter 1. Why is acknowledging your role so important before moving on to emotions and grief work?
I feel like you got to, before you can start the work, you have to know where you are. You have to know what role do you sit in as you look in with yourselves without judgment. Just want to make sure I mention that because, like I said, man, we can be hard on ourselves, so we can beat ourselves up a little bit. But it makes self-awareness is essential because if we know where we are, where we are in our role, where to start, who we are, and then we know how to go from there to look at our abortion healing journey and really have a chance to heal and be able just to relate to other men more of ourselves.
Thanks, Niles. So we're going to jump to chapter 2, which opens with a bold challenge to the idea that men don't talk about their feelings, that whole idea that Dr. Levant addressed. Niles, how does this chapter help men get beyond that pattern of not identifying, not talking about, or not managing their emotions?
And it's something that's been pushed on a lot of men from a young age. We don't talk about our emotions. We put it into a box and we leave it there. But the thing they don't talk about is what happens if that box starts to open a little bit. If somebody gets, if something, a situation or reaction happens where that box opens and these emotions pour out. And it's been pushed on us maybe that don't be soft, especially if you're an athlete or any man at all. Your father wants you to be this hardened man and you become, like I said, you put it into that box, you want to lock it away and forget about it. But now you're telling me it's okay to feel and talk about my emotions. That could push a man back and make him feel standoffish because he's never had anyone say that to him. He's never felt comfortable enough or had the space to really do that. The questions here in Finding Solid Ground are solid. It helps guys get honest with themselves and sort of sort through what they're feeling. Without pushing too hard or getting in their face, it gives the man the space and comfortability to really look within themselves.
Thank you, Niles. All right, let's do one more question for chapter 2. Once men name what they felt, the chapter invites them to think about how they handled it. How does that help men spot what's helped or hurt their healing?
Finally started growing actually had me look within myself during my healing journey. Not even through my healing journey, after my abortion experience, became very angry. I was an athlete, so I'm thinking, okay, it's good to be angry before practice, but it had me acting in a way that with my teammates that wasn't healthy. I was very over aggressive. My coaches were praising it, so that made me want to do it even more. But then when I look back into it, I was like, I was just angry for no reason. My teammates didn't deserve the things I said or did or anything like that. I never seriously hurt them, but it started to make my teammates feel like maybe I was against them in some way, or some of them were just a little off put by how I was acting. So maybe thinking back to it, I wish I could apologize to them and be able to share them what was going on. But even saying that doesn't feel comfortable because I don't even know how they would have reacted.
That makes it so real. Thanks, Niles, for sharing that. All right, let's go to chapter 3, which is grieving the loss. Chapter 3 says grief is a natural response to loss, but not everyone thinks of their abortion as loss, even though they may be wrestling with tough emotions. So, Niles, can you talk a little about what kinds of losses men may feel after abortion?
Again, this is something that spoke to me personally. I have a son, as Kylie mentioned, me being a parent after my experience. And he got to the age where he was like, hey, can I have a sibling, brother or sister? He didn't care. And he was asking me like I could go to the store and purchase one. But I say it in a funny way, but at the time, it was very hard for me to be able to tell him, like, hey, it'll happen when it happens, knowing at my abortion experience took the opportunity away from him. I had dreams myself. I've always wanted to be a girl dad. I know everybody wants their boy, and I have my boy. I love my son to death, but just being able to have my that girl be that girl dad and just be able to have the opportunity, I felt like I never got to know, even if my abortion experience, if it was going to be a boy or girl, but I was praying it was a girl, and it was one of those things that really spoke to me differently, as well as on our after abortion line. Guys talk about their losses in relationships, They don't have peace all the time. Certain thoughts or things trigger them. They have dreams about fatherhood. I've heard men say they have dreams about that, or even opportunity. Some don't. When they have the opportunity to be a father now, they still think about their abortion experience. You're like, I don't deserve it. It also can damage their trust a little bit, depending on their abortion experience with maybe their own family, their partner in different ways. It can damage a man in different ways.
It is really impactful, Niles. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Grief doesn't follow a timeline, and the book really leans into that. How can that thought, that idea, help men who may feel like, or even have been told, that they should have moved on by now, or that maybe the man is trying to follow the stages of grief model that we hear about?
It helps men realize, as we know, that grieving is not a setback. Most of us feel maybe if we feel a certain emotion very strongly that we're holding ourselves back, but finding solid ground emphasizes that it's a part of the growth and healing process to let you know it's okay. This is natural. You don't have to feel alone. You don't have to feel singled out. You don't have to feel like you're being held back, but you're going through the process. Helps to see the stages of grief. The stage aren't really stages. They may go through some and not others. They may stay in one for a while, and some may be able to approach their healing journey. My personal experience, I was in denial for a long time. After my abortion experience, I put into a box, didn't talk to my partner about it when we were together. And for years, I forgot about it till I started working at Support After Abortion, where they allowed me to approach my healing journey, even though I didn't know I needed to heal. But Support After Abortion provided me with the opportunity. And then finding solid ground even made me dig a little bit deeper. I even experienced bargaining and what ifs. What if I did keep this child? Would me and my partner at the time still have been together? Would I have been less angry or certain things like that? And I feel like other men can relate to that as well.
Thank you for sharing that, Niles. So in chapter 4, we move into anger and forgiveness. And it highlights that anger is one of the toughest parts of healing. How does the book help men identify where their anger is coming from? What's behind it?
Anger is usually just a surface. What guys feel first because it's what we're told. We said we can't feel sad, we can't feel down, we can't have any bad days. So anytime you want to feel something, anger. Because they say when you're angry, let's go work out. When you're angry, you're gonna have a great game, whatever sport you play. And that's just promoted at such a young age at all times. And sometimes with men, when they feel any kind of maybe something that's off, or maybe they feel like anything that makes them feel discomfort, it's like, I'm angry about it. But the thing is, you're not angry, know who you're angry at. Anger is a safer feeling than sadness, fear, and guilt. Because men, we know what to do with anger. But when we feel these other emotions, we're like, what do I do with sadness? I can't play a football game sad. I can't play video games with fear. I can't go mow the lawn with guilt because that's not natural to us. We're not told that. This chapter talks about all this without any judgment and walks guys through questions to help them figure out why they're angry. Like, did they feel powerless, betrayed, ignored, guilty? It helps men present all those ideas and figure out where this anger is coming from.
That's so good. Thank you. The chapter talks about forgiveness not being a feeling. Can you share some of the practical tools the chapter gives that help men do the work of forgiving, whether it's forgiving themselves, others, or even God?
Without giving away too much, because we would love for you to go read in chapter 4 yourself and Finding Solid Ground. In our challenge time, questions and tasks, this presents the ideals for men to really dive in and really look into themselves, as well as around them and where this anger and how to approach forgiveness. One of my favorite things I talk about as well, I was talking to Michelle when I was thinking about this section was, I don't know how many of you are Marvel fans, love those superhero movies, but I think about the Hulk. Whenever they want the Hulk to calm down, they say the sun's setting, big fella, and he starts to come down to his normal self. And I always think of that when it comes to myself. I'm not saying I turn into this big green monster when I'm angry, but I become very irritable. I can become very not myself as most people know me, and I feel like that I can relate to that. And chapter 4 allows me to come down myself without someone else telling me the sunset, but I can tell my own self. And there's even a mental offload exercise that we would love for y'all to go see as well.
Such great points. Thank you, Niles. We are going to shift into chapter 5, which is drawing close to God. So I want to ask you, Niles, we place this chapter on drawing close to God very intentionally. Can you talk about why it's here and not in another place in the book?
Of course, by this point in the book, we talked about a lot of things: men's roles, emotions, grief, anger, and forgiveness. And we want to let them know God's been present all along, gently and conversationally in a real everyday kind of way. Now, after doing the emotional work and being filled with God's love and mercy, this chapter invites men to take a chance to have a closer look at their relationship with God. We feel like presenting this earlier, men may not be there in their healing, in their abortion healing journey, or really approach that. Because if you say, let's draw closer to God, you're like, what am I drawing closer to God for exactly? Because I don't even know what's wrong with me yet, or I don't want to say what's wrong with me, but what's going on inside of me.
Thanks. That's really impactful. Yeah, they're often you're just not ready on day one. The chapter also talks about the noisiness of life and how we can feel like hamsters spinning out of control. Can you talk about the 3 spiritual ways the book encourages men to draw closer to God?
Without giving too much away, because we would love for you all to go look at those tips for them yourselves. So we would love for you to go look at Finding Solid Ground. But the 3 are prayer, meditation, and service. Service is one that speaks to me because I've always myself personally felt a certain joy or brightness in myself and day when I'm able to support someone else. And I like to think of it in a way of it's so easy for us to spill our cups throughout the day with little mishaps. Maybe your pants get stuck on the door handle. You spill a little bit of your coffee or your shirt. You get some gum on your shoe. There's so many things that can make us feel down and say this day, today has been terrible, and it's only 9 a.m. But being able to support and be able to support service others and be able to have that active service can really help us fill that cup and say, you know what, no matter what's happened to me at 9 a.m., I made somebody else's day better. I put a smile on someone's face, no matter it's a child that you may be helping buy a piece of gum for or something like that, or helping someone across the street in any kind of way. Just being able to fill your cup has always had that feeling of joy.
Thanks, Niles. Your thing with the kid reminds me. There was a time when I was taking my youngest to QT, and some man behind her bought her slushy for her, and man, she just beamed. Some big guy, that's just out of the blue. It was really nice. Niles kind of jumped to the service because that really was meaningful for you, but I do want to encourage you to get the book because the prayer and meditation sections are equally powerful. So Niles, based on what you've said for the last 2 questions, I have a feeling what you're going to say here, but the chapter offers 5 holy habits to draw closer to God and 5 tips for building new habits that stick. Can you tell us a little about those?
Like I said, like Michelle said, I don't want to give too much away because I'd love for you all to read Finding Solid Ground for yourselves. But I'll just give you a little teaser of what's up. It's in this chapter. Taking 5 quiet minutes of prayer with God in your truck after work is able to do. Maybe you have that time. Maybe in the morning before you set out and go to work, or just any opportunity where you can just really sit down and have that conversation with God and just present everything with Him and let Him just listen to you. Have a conversation. Chapter 5 really helps you through those. Like Michelle said, there's other great tips in there as well, more than just this one. But we would love for you to go see them yourselves.
Awesome. Thank you, Niles. So we have reached the final chapter. Remember that man speak wording that we talked about earlier on in examples. This is the chapter that starts with boom, you made it. Props to you. After doing all the hard work through the previous 5 chapters, men are now challenged to consider what's next for their healing. The book reminds men that healing is a journey, not a destination. Niles, can you talk a little about why that perspective is so important, especially at the end of a book like this?
Yes, and I know I'm not the only man, but when I read something like Finding Solid Ground has helped me, and we like clap our hands at the end of the book. All right, well, good, I'm done, I'm healed, I'm free. But that's not what Finding Solid Ground really pushes. Finding Solid Ground really emphasizes the thought of this isn't the end of your healing journey, but it's the beginning, allowing you to really be intentional with your activities day to day, or giving you little, like we had warrior tips, certain things out throughout the book that can be used not just while you're reading Finding Solid Ground, but day to day, write it down. You have like leave the little piece of paper, maybe even notes in your phone. I know that can be very helpful, and Finding Solid Ground presents that.
You said that really well. Thanks, Niles. So some of the questions in chapter 6 guide men to reflect on where they were at the start of the book and where they are now. Why is it powerful for guys to recognize that they're not the same man who started this journey?
It helps men realize that there's the growth and the time they took to read the book, that they've already changed a little bit. Like, and this doesn't have to be a whole different changed person. Don't want men to think that. But one thing I like to emphasize as me being a coach and other men talking to other men is if you could just grow 1%, that 1% you're better than what you were yesterday, or you are better than you were before you read that chapter. And that helps men encourage them to say, okay, I am different. This is working when I am intentional and I'm ready to approach this journey. And that just helps men wants to continue and just keep growing from there.
Awesome. That's so real. I appreciate you sharing that, Niles. I love all the tips from the coaching and the players. Definitely guy stuff. I did not have football and coaching. so it's good to hear that. All right, one more question for chapter 6. Why is it significant for guys that the chapter emphasizes that there's not just one right way to continue healing, and the idea that you don't have to do it alone?
Once men finish finding solid ground, they may feel like they're in uncharted territory with no map. And this makes me think of camping. And and I like to emphasize this in a different way. As I was reading Five Solid Ground, what I told Michelle was some men, when we go camping, we want to make fires with rocks. Some of us want to use a fire starter kit, and there's no judgment at all. To be honest with you, I'm struggle with both. So, but some men may be comfortable with one or the other. We want to make sure we emphasize that Five Solid Ground. Whatever is comfortable with you this is where you can grow. And gets guys that ask questions like, what if finding solid ground kick up for me? It might be addiction, childhood abandonment, relationship issues, gambling, you name it. Finding solid ground speaks to all of that. Maybe men want to go deeper in their abortion healing journey. Finding solid ground helps them to give them the steps to go in that area. Finding solid ground tells men to let that be your guide to your next step. It'll be different for every guy, as I mentioned. Some are fire starter kite men, some are just lighter men. Some may just get a lighter with and make a big pile of leaves or any way they feel comfortable. And whatever the next steps they choose, there's support available.
Awesome. So we just talked about what's next for the reader. Let's share what's next for finding solid ground. We are working on client videos so that together with the book, men will have a self-guided path to healing with finding solid ground. And our goal is to have those new videos ready to roll out at CareNet this August. And then down the road, we plan to create a facilitator guide and training videos. And we very much want to collaborate with providers. So if you're interested in using Finding Solid Ground with men, whether that's mentoring men one-on-one or offering groups virtually in person, reach out to Niles. He would love to chat with you about that. And of course, as Niles said, we want you all to have a copy of Finding Solid Ground. Some of the early feedback that we've had is any man would benefit from this study. We'll be using Finding Solid Ground in our center. Absolutely loved it. Can't wait to lead guys through it. So you can scan the QR code here, or the link will be in the 1 p.m. in the recap emails. We would very much love for you to get your copy of Finding Solid Ground. And then, if you've already read it, or after you do, we'd love to hear your thoughts. So please, you can click the link that in the 1 p.m. in the recap emails so that you can share your thoughts about the book after you read it. We have a few minutes that we can spend answering any questions you all may have about Finding Solid Ground. You can just drop them in the chat. So Niles, I imagine we've probably had some questions either in chat or direct message. Do you see something for us to respond to?
Yes. One question I received was, how does Finding Solid Ground compare to Keys of Hope and Healing? I went through both, as I talked about when I started as support after abortion. I had the opportunity to go approach my healing journey. Both are solid tools for helping men really work through their abortion healing journey. As we know, Keys to Hope and Healing is secular and Finding Solid Ground is religious, but they complement each other very well. Some overlap ideas that forgiveness is a decision and not a feeling. But the tone, structure, and focus are different. Men may use both. Some may approach Finding Solid Ground first and like, okay, I'm Christian, but I still want to see what the secular Keys of Hope and Healing has to present. It makes me help look to my healing journey in that way. Or some men may reach out, as I've learned through our after abortion line, that we have some men that say, I want a secular resource. I don't want to really be into my faith right away. But then as they read the Keys to Hope and Healing, they're like, okay, I feel really good. What else is there out there? And they give Finding Solid Ground a chance. I definitely feel that bottom line, Keys to Hope and Healing and Finding Solid Ground give you options. I really would like for you to read both, and we'd love to hear your feedback there. They're when you're working with a man and you get a sense of who he is, when he's in his journey, and what he's looking for.
Yeah, that's awesome. You look at them both, and then you'll be able to have a comfort level on which one to recommend or which one to work with any particular man who comes into your center or practice. Miles, do we have any other questions, Miles?
Yes, I just received a question from Deborah. She says, do you recommend this for men who have not participated in an abortion decision, but their wife or girlfriend has had one before they were together? And I could speak to this myself personally. I would recommend this to other men because I feel like this could allow men to have a different insight into what their partner, but look within themselves to be a little bit more have I like to say look within empathy and be able to relate. Because as we said, we can never understand which each person is going through emotionally and mentally, but it helps us give an idea so we can relate with empathy to understand. One question I received is, what if a man says he doesn't think he's angry or doesn't need forgiveness or isn't ready to dig into his anger? Does this book still work for him? I personally say, of course. That's common. No man wants to figure out why we're angry. We just want to keep that angry and keep using it as fuel. But that fuel burns fast, and anybody that knows, it runs out. A lot of guys, like I mentioned, recognize their anger initially. And I just want to say the same thing with forgiveness. It's not just it's not just do you need to be forgiven? I would like to say it's what are you still carrying and how can we carry that differently and why is it weighing you down? It helps guys realize forgiveness isn't for someone else's benefit as well. And I like to finish with saying the chapter gives space for that without rushing it.
That's awesome. I really like that about that forgiveness isn't for somebody else's benefit.
Now, another question, I feel like this is one that I'd love to share the story about, me and Michelle. We can work together on this, is how did we come up with the title for Finding Solid Ground? And I can speak to this at first. As we were working on Finding Solid Ground, there came a time when it needed a title. We couldn't just give you a resource with nothing on it, a blank page. So our team offered over 50 ideas and feedback of these ideas. Then we whittled down to a handful, and then Michelle, I'd love for you to share exactly how we got to the finalist options and what we did with them as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I really like I love the title. And in terms of what we did, once our team whittled down that list, it just happened to coincide with when we were filming our new video story series, which had an almost all male crew of, they had a big crew. So there were a lot of guys there for that. And many actors that were doing the story. So I had the various titles that we were thinking about all written down, and I took it one at a time so the guys wouldn't hear what each other said and asked them. So admittedly, not a scientific sample, but it was very interesting, and they took it very seriously. They asked questions, some of them. It opens up some good conversations, and the overwhelming majority chose Finding Solid Ground, A Man's Guide to Abortion Healing. And just quickly, one of the things that I just loved because it really impacted me in that whole idea of what speaks differently to men. To me, I didn't really see a difference in saying a man's guide versus for men. We had titles that had both of those in there, but several of the men said saying a man's guide felt like it was built for men, whereas for men to them meant that it was really a woman's resource that had been tweaked for men. And that was very impactful. And since we did build this for men, a man's guide it is. And I also love, we all did, the Finding Solid Ground ties into both emotional healing and religious faith. You might think of that verse in Psalms 40, where it talks about, he set my feet on solid ground after he heard my voice and my cry in the mud. And I just love that tie-in. I think we have time for another question. Do we have one?
Yes, I have one right here. This is for you, Michelle. You said there's a lot of scriptures in Finding Solid Ground. What Bible version did you use?
Ooh, That's a great question. Thank you for asking. So we were very intentional in wanting Finding Solid Ground to speak to a wide Christian audience. So we actually used verses taken from 13 different Bible translations. It is probably the longest scripture listing on a copyright page that I've ever seen. They span from very formal, like the King James Version, to very informal, like the Message and the Bible in Basic English. And they include verses from 10 Protestant and 3 Catholic versions. So lots of Bible. Niles, do we have another one?
Of course, it is. They asked me personally, Niles, do you find this leads ongoing men's groups? And I feel like Find Solid Ground was just released a few months ago, but the way the chapters are aligned, it has 6 chapters. Maybe some men want to read their chapters and then come back and read with you, or maybe there's something as they read, they just reach out to you as well. And really, it just depends on what men are comfortable in going alongside you in this journey in their abortion healing. And Find Solid Ground can really approach that and through faith from groups.
Yeah, I think it could absolutely work in a group, like Niles said, with the structure of just like Unraveled Roots and Keys to Hope and Healing, where the 6 keys, 6 chapters, Finding Solid Ground was built the same way so that it could be done within a small group or one-on-one or individually, really whatever would be comfortable for the men. And once you do a group, we would love to hear how that goes for you.
This is something I can't speak to, but Michelle, I feel like you would have know about this. But someone asked, will this book potentially be translated into Spanish?
Great question. I could put it in our hopper. That's a great idea. We have Keys to Hope and Healing, Women's and Men in Spanish. We have Unraveled Roots for Women in Spanish. And Niles, I think, didn't you say at Heartbeat that there was a huge request for Spanish resources?
Yes, there was a huge request for Spanish resources in the Texas area that I heard, and that's something like Michelle said, we'll put in a hopper and we can work on that the best we can, and we'd love for that to be available for others.
All right. Another one? I love all these questions.
Yes, I do. Really appreciate that.
Love to see the engagement.
Do you think it's important that a man leads a Find Solid Ground group rather than a woman? I can answer that. I feel like you just have to know the man that you're working with and his comfortable level, as well as his past abortion experience. Some men may be comfortable with having a woman lead their group, and there's nothing wrong with that. If he feels like you have a certain relationship with this man, he trusts you and he can really relate to you and you can relate to him and see where he's coming from, I feel like that could go together. But sometimes some men do not feel comfortable with a woman running their group and certain things like this because they may feel judged. Maybe their past relationship, there's something that happened with their partner that makes them feel uncomfortable with communicating certain things with women. So I think you just have to know the man and talk to him and just ask him and say, hey, we have a Find Solid Ground group. We have a group, but it's ran by a woman. Are you comfortable with that? And if he says no, then maybe that's something that we work on finding a way that he can have a man run that group. And if he says yes, then we'd love to have you support him in that journey as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Niles. And if your capacity for group is a woman, maybe you still have a man who would be able to do a one-on-one if men aren't comfortable with that. I would say, obviously, not a man here, but sitting in communication seat, my one tip would be that the language that resonates with men is very different. And keeping language in mind, I remember we had a speaker at one of the webinars say how very important it was not to be bothered by the language that men might use. And I've had that from both women and men, that I need to tell my story my way. Thank you all for your questions. Really great questions. This next bit is so important. I really wanted a chance to talk to you about this. We have experienced a significant increase in the number of our after abortion line clients who are asking for one-on-one support. And the few providers that we know who offer one-on-one are already at capacity. Clients are looking for both structured one-on-one, where they can work through an abortion healing program with a mentor, and clients are looking for unstructured one-on-one, where they just want to talk to someone, but they aren't looking for a program at this time. We also have some clients who are asking about drop-in groups. So if you offer one-on-ones, it could be phone, text, Zoom, email, in person, or drop-ins. Zoom or in person or some other format that's virtual besides Zoom, please email Niles. His email address is nyles@supportafterabortion.com. And we would be so grateful to know who among you offer one-on-one and drop-in groups. I want to give you a heads up that you will want to be on our email list. As we shared in our Power of Storytelling webinar in May, where we previewed a few of our new video story series, we have 8 stories that are coming out over the next 2 months. So you'll want to be able to watch your inbox as we roll these stories out. Thomas's story published last week. That's the one that we shared in full with you in May. But beyond the videos, when you get those blogs, you'll want to look at those too, because when we did the interviews, an interview lasts maybe an hour or more. Plus there's back and forth through the editing process. And the videos are like 5 to 6 minutes. So there's a lot that doesn't make the video. And so in the blogs, we actually are able to share with you a little bit that didn't make the final cut, but is nevertheless very impactful. And there's a lot of other parts in there. Perhaps somebody's story really touches on generational trauma or memorialization or childhood wounds, whatever those might be. There's going to be some more about that in the blog too that will be useful for you. So as I said, Thomas's story published last week. Anna's story will post today. The videos will be live on our YouTube channel, and then we'll have that blog that I was mentioning that'll be on the website, or if you're on our email list, you'll get it in your inbox. So if you haven't yet subscribed to our email list, you'll want to do that. You can scroll to the bottom of our homepage and just sign up. So that's supportafterabortion.com. And you can do that today. All right, Niles.
And I just want to say thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time and learning about Finding Solid Ground. And we love the opportunity that we get to tell you about it.
Again, we thank you so much for joining us and for the discussion. Niles, thanks for joining me. I love engaging with you on Finding Solid Ground. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.